Hello. I hate to kill the sheep streak, but there were no sheep on the Appalachian Trail. So instead I have to speak to you about community. Before I dive too deep, I kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit. So the Appalachian Trail is a 2,200-mile footpath that runs from Springer Mountain in Georgia to Mount Katahdin in Maine. Traversing over just about every mountain it possibly can along the way, they say it's for the views, but us hikers really know it's so that it's never too easy. When you attempt the entire trail in one season, typically a 5 to 7 month endeavor, it's called thru hiking, and you are called a thru hiker. Lots of things come with that. You get a funny name, you meet lots of people. Each year, 3,000-ish hikers arrive in Georgia in the early spring to attempt their thru hike. And of these 3,000 hikers, only about 25% of them will make it to the northern terminus in Maine. Now, when I talk about the trail, not a lot of people are surprised that I was out in the woods, sleeping in a tent, drinking from streams, carrying stuff on my back, but many people are surprised to hear that my experience on the Appalachian Trail was an incredibly social one. Out in the middle of the woods, tromping through the forest, days away from the closest town, I was almost always surrounded by others, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. The community along the Appalachian Trail was one of the richest I've ever encountered. And my time spent on trail as part of this community was incredibly nourishing. Community didn't just make the day-to-day more fun, lighter, but was a truly transformative experience that left me feeling like a bolder, more settled version of myself. A feeling that sticks with me now and has made the chaotic and challenging transition back from trail a little bit more manageable. It changed the way I saw myself when day after day I was deeply embraced by others just as I was. But that's just my experience. In the words of the one and only, the amazing, my trail friend Matt, also known as Bones on Trail, who's here today from East Tennessee, writes, "As I enumerate other memorable activities of happiness I've felt along the way, they're all better with people. If not requiring them, learning and teaching are better with personal connection, problem solving is better with cooperation, natural beauty is best when shared, kindness and gratitude must be social. The only thing as rewarding as personal growth is seeing it in others." Community is a beautiful thing, a sacred thing. I truly believe that rich community is one of the best ways to experience and share the kingdom of God here on earth. But as most things, it's easier said than done. So when unpacking my experience of this beautiful community on trail, trying to pull apart the success stories and find the nuggets that might help us build richer community in places like this, generosity comes to the surface. To even begin to community, we have to be willing to boldly embrace the assumption that we have something to give and others have value to offer our lives. On trail, this assumption was not a choice, but a mandate of the situation we all found ourselves in. A situation where self-reliance just wasn't an option. We relied on the generosity of others for our basic needs on a regular basis. Again, stealing the words from Bones, the first line of support for hikers is other hikers. Small problems are solved before they become bigger problems. Big problems are solved by bigger generosity. So often my well-being would rely on the generosity of others. When I sprained my ankle, it was my fellow hikers who carried my heaviest gear so that I could get to a road safely. Or there was Pennsylvania, where the droughts were so severe that the creeks became dry. And for hundreds of miles, the only water I could rely on were the gallon jugs filled with water and left at road crossings, maintained by volunteers. Or when in the most remote portions of Vermont and New Hampshire, our only way to get into town, this place with more food, electricity, maybe a shower, a burger, was by sticking out our thumb and hoping a stranger would offer us a ride. When given a personal opportunity on trail to provide mutual aid, there was never any hesitation. How could you hold back when generosity of others was the only reason you had made it that far? I have a suspicion that this isn't only true when hiking, that if we examine our lives, we will see the innumerable ways we have been the beneficiary of generosity, big and small, especially in communities like this. And if we truly let that sink in, then it becomes easier to boldly lean into our own capacity for generosity, to act more frequently when given opportunities to help others along this journey. Coming at it from a different angle, though, you could also say that a second component of this generosity, maybe a reason it was easier on trail than in places like this, was an emphasis on minimalism. When you have to carry everything with you, holding on to things that no longer serve you just isn't an option. On trail, in every town and every hostel, sometimes even in the shelters in the middle of the woods, there were these things called hiker boxes. These boxes were a place to leave your excess. And if you needed anything, it was a good first place to check. You could find everything from tents to Ziploc bags, and time after time you would hear stories of hikers finding exactly what they needed. There was a saying for that even, the trail provides. A pair of camp shoes the day after their flip-flops had given out, toilet paper they had forgotten to buy at the store, batteries for a dying headlamp. It was a constant practice to let go and let material goods simply pass through you, that it may help someone else. And again, it strikes me as a practice that probably not only holds value on the trail. And saving the best for last. I think the most powerful thing about the generosity on trail is that it made no attempts to stop when it was no longer all about being practical. When it was no longer about keeping your pack weight down or crisis prevention. Absolutely not. It firmly crossed over into the love without abandon category on a regular basis. There's this tradition on trail called trail magic. And it comes in all shapes and sizes, but trail magic were acts of generosity, kindness, and support that often existed not because it was needed, but because it would bring joy. Sometimes it was a cooler in the woods full of Coca-Colas. Or other times it was a full-fledged backcountry burger station. But every single time, the rules were the same. Eat until you are full, have a soda, have another. Sit as long as you'd like. You are always welcome here. Everyone always was. There was nothing you ever had to do in return. Encountering this level of generosity was normal, a weekly occurrence, but often more frequent than that, and each time it made my day. It made me feel deeply loved. That so often was the whole point. In Georgia, there were many of these stations run by local churches, and we were always told that it was to pass on the love of Christ. The slogan was, "I love because I am loved." Their view of sharing the love of Christ was to give in a way that created abundance. And I think they've got the right idea. In an attempt to summarize what I've learned about community from the Appalachian Trail, let go of what you don't need, reach out to one another, bring your needs and bring your gifts, but don't stop there. Find the opportunities to drown the world in a moment of generosity and abundance, to let a generosity that mirrors that of the divine shimmer here on earth, if only for a moment, because it's a truly beautiful thing.